Hi guys, Valentina here, ValentinaPetrovaConsulting.com, and today I'm here to discuss something with you that it's in an area that I usually don't go into. It's mental health pathology. I'm not a clinical psychologist. I have a master's in psychology, but I work as a life coach because I prefer to work with potential rather than pathology. But pathology is part of life. And it becomes an issue, especially when we're in relationships or any kind of relationship, working relationship, family members, or intimate relationship with somebody who has some form of a mental health issue. It's challenging for everyone around. So today I want to focus on a specific group of disorders. It's called Cluster B personality disorders. And under that cluster, you will see some very familiar things like antisocial personality disorder. Those are the psychopaths and the sociopaths, just terms that you've heard probably more often. Also, histrionic personality disorder, narcissistic, and borderline personality disorder. So these are the four in the cluster. They're in a cluster because they have similarities and often comorbidity. So a person could be mainly one of those things and have influences from the others as well, exhibit symptoms from the others as well. And there can be mixtures of things. So these are not any one of the mental health disorders is not anything that's completely strictly organized in a little frame. Things bleed into each other constantly. The reason for this is that these are people in the cluster B that usually go around undiagnosed, and they're causing a lot of trouble to themselves and others. And there's no real way to treat them outside of psychotherapy. Medications don't seem to work, or that there are any that actually often get prescribed at all, even. Therapy works, but mostly the people in that cluster don't understand or don't see that there is anything wrong with them. So they have no motivation to go looking for help. And even when they destroy their lives or they're experiencing a lot of consequences because of their disorder, they don't seek help. They think it's somebody else's fault and they think they'll do better next time and all that. So it's an unfortunate situation. For the rest of us who have to deal with them, it's very confusing to be in a relationship with a person like that. In general, when we're in relationships with people, we're not expecting to be talking to a pathological case. And for the sake of just knowing the numbers, knowing the statistics, I will give you some numbers so you can see what percentage of the population would fall under those categories. So, for example, the antisocial personality disorder, APD, 4% of the population, roughly, will have that disorder. Could be diagnosed with that disorder, and it's usually men outnumbering women 20-1. The HPD, or the histrionic personality disorder, it's between 1 and 3% of the population. We're talking about healthy population. You see higher concentrations of the disorders in specific populations. Like if you go into a jail, you're going to see a lot more antisocial and HPDs and all that. But let's say we're talking about the average normal population. 1-3% of the population is diagnosable with this, or has been diagnosed with this. And usually women outnumber men, but 4-1. The narcissistic personality disorder, about 1% of the population, the healthy population, or I guess you can't call them whole, but 1% of the normal population has the disorder, and it could be as much as 75%. Men outnumber women. And the borderline personality disorder, about 6% of the population, and it's about roughly the same men and women. So when you think about it, it doesn't sound like big numbers, but that's still a lot of trouble. Like 4% of the population means 1 in 25 people. So 1 in 25 of your friends could be a psychopath or a sociopath or has histrionic personality disorder. So serious stuff. You can literally bump into these people. Sometimes you don't realize it because they're not a big part of your life. so you have no reason to experience or suspect anything abnormal. And like I said, most of them don't realize that there is something abnormal about them. So these are just numbers. I have a list here of certain symptoms that you will recognize with the different disorders, and you will notice that there are, again, similarities between the disorders. For example, there's about a 41% overlap in symptoms between HPD and APD. So if it sounds similar, that's because that's what's going on. Now, before I go into it, I want to make the following statement. If you're in a relationship with someone like this, intimately, work-related, friends, whatever, you need to be paying attention for these symptoms, because it will make a difference about of how you're going to treat that person, and it will help you make a decision for yourself as to whether or not you want to be involved with this person. But you don't have to look for enough evidence to diagnose the person with one or another disorder. If you see some of these symptoms and they are enduring patterns in time, whether or not they're diagnosable with one or another disorder, it doesn't matter. This is still not the kind of person you want to hang out with, okay? So if any of your friends or your loved ones is exhibiting these symptoms or clusters of them, whether or not they're diagnosed or diagnosable, it doesn't matter. These are still not people you want to hang out with. So you want to cut ties and establish boundaries as soon as possible. We can't disappear in all circumstances. Sometimes we're married to these folks, or we have children with these folks, or they're our own children or our own siblings and parents, so we can't exactly disown them, but we can set strong boundaries so we're not being taken advantage of. That leads me to the first and the most important symptom or quality of a person that has one of these disorders. Across the border, all 4 disorders, these people are strictly motivated by personal gain or personal pleasure. You must understand that they don't care about you as much as you think they do. Probably not at all. They do care about what you can do for them, what you are doing for them, and what they're getting out of you. And they will use all means necessary to continue to extract from you what they need. And what they need might be emotional support, it might be financial support, it might be all kinds of things. So don't just think about materialistic things. Yes, those are a big part of it, but it could be the emotional involvement that they're getting. So here I go through the disorders. APD, so sociopaths and psychopaths. They have a total disregard for others' needs and feelings. They really don't care. They're persistently lying, stealing, conning. They can use aliases and manipulate people. So manipulation is huge. And, lying is all sorts of lying. So flat out making up stories or omitting information is still lying. And so they lie to get what they want. They lie to get out of trouble. They lie to manipulate you into doing things. All kinds of reasons. They have problems with the law. Often they rule breakers, and they don't care. They're not very good at thinking consequences. And they also think, in general, they think they're smarter than anybody else, so they'll never get caught. And so they're having run-ins with the law all the time. So if you look into jail populations, you'll see about 40% of the population has antisocial personality disorder. So it's huge compared to just 4% within the average population. They have no problem violating the rights of others. Often they're violent and aggressive, but not always. So there is variation. You can't just expect everybody that has a particular disorder to act the same and do the same things. There are variations to the theme. Like I said, these disorders bleed into each other, so they get influence from others, and every person is unique in its own way, but if they have the majority of these characteristics, then you can safely say that They're seriously troubled. So they have disregard for the safety of others and often for their own safety. So they take unnecessary risks. They're impulsive, very impulsive. They're consistently irresponsible. They don't follow through. They're delinquent on their bills. They're just financially irresponsible and in other ways irresponsible. They don't keep their promises very well, and then to cover it up, they lie. So they give you a story. They have another big hallmark of antisocial personality disorder is that they have lack of remorse for their behavior. It's amazing. Like they might apologize to you because they know they have to if they want to continue to involve you in their schemes, but they actually don't feel remorse, and that's because they don't feel empathy. Those two go hand in hand. For someone to feel remorse, they have to be able to feel empathy towards another person. So we in psychology distinguish between two kinds of empathy. We speak of cognitive empathy and we speak of vicarious empathy. Vicarious empathy is when you actually feel the feelings of another person. So when a child is crying, you feel it in your heart. You're sad. When your friend is distressed, you can feel it in your body, the distress. You can feel it in your body. You can feel with the person. That's vicarious empathy. Cognitive empathy is when you are looking at an emotion, you're looking at the distress of another person, and you cognitively know they're distressed, but you have no feeling associated with it, and you don't particularly care. But you know that you have to respond in a certain way to match that person's emotional response. But it's a cognitive thing. It's a decision rather than a feeling. So when we talk about these disorders lacking empathy, that's what we mean. We mean they lack vicarious empathy. They may not lack cognitive empathy. Psychopaths probably lack both. Sociopaths lack vicarious empathy, but they could still have cognitive empathy. Again, they're solely motivated by personal gain and pleasure. We call the psychopaths cold-hearted. That's because the lack of empathy and because they cannot experience emotion. They have a very shallow emotional effect. So they actually don't experience emotion. And we call sociopaths hot-headed. That's because they're very impulsive and they have a degree of conscience. While psychopaths don't have conscience, sociopaths have a small degree of conscience. And small degree of conscience means they can sort of see the effect of their actions on others and maybe have a momentary thought about it, but that conscience is not strong enough for them to be deterred from their actions or to deter their behavior. So, but they're very impulsive. They tend to seek dangerous situations for no particular reason because they're always looking for stimulation. All right, so that's antisocial personality disorder, main symptoms and characteristics. If you look at the DSM, these things are listed there in slightly different language. And for a person to be diagnosed, they have to hit several of these criteria. You can't just have one or two or three. You have to have a basket of them to confidently diagnose a person with that disorder. But again, you don't have to have a full disorder for you to stay away from a person who exhibits these characteristics on a regular basis, because you don't want to be manipulated, you don't want to be lied to, you don't want to be around violent people, all that stuff. So the next one is HPD. So histrionic personality disorder. They're constantly seeking attention. Just like the sociopaths and the psychopaths, they're very charming. They're very charismatic. The HPD people are probably the most charismatic and the most seductive. They use sexuality as one of their main manipulation tools. and is one of their main ways of attracting others to themselves. So charming, seductive, playful, vivacious. They have excessive concern with physical appearance and aesthetic appearance. So these are the folks that are constantly checking themselves in the mirror. They're preoccupied with body image, and they are always selling their body image. They're always selling their physiological characteristics. I'm cute. They get by on cute or pretty. That's their main thing. And it's very important to them. So if they're women, they are often well-dressed, makeup, hair, all that stuff. If they're men, maybe, they got great bodies. They're always flaunting them around, and they're trying to get attention for that. So they're just like the psychopaths and the sociopaths. They're very manipulative and deceptive. And manipulative and deceptive means they're employing every mean possible to get what they want. So they could tell lies, create confusion. They'll tell you what you want to hear, not what really is. They will hide their actions from you. They'll do things behind your back. They'll deny it afterwards. Or when you confront them, they'll make up a story about it. They're really good at rationalizing things. So, but they're also easily influenced by others. Because they easily influenced by others, they end up doing all kinds of stuff with all kinds of people without good judgment. They're sexually provocative, and it's a attention-seeking behavior. They're constantly looking for validation, and physical appearance and sexuality gets them usually pretty good bang for their buck, because they're getting compliments and they're feeling the attraction of others. They also have a shallow emotional effect, so they don't experience the emotions fully the way they should, and they're also kind of discombobulated about how much emotion is necessary under what circumstances. The emotions tend to pass fast through them, and they don't digest emotionally things the way a mentally healthy adult would. They think relationships with others are closer than they really are. So these are the people that always have a friend somewhere. Like you be talking about something and say, oh, I have a friend who blah, blah, blah. Or they'll constantly associate themselves, they will portray themselves closer to high status people than they actually are. They will seek closeness with high status people with more money, people with more popularity. They will seek closeness, but they will usually exaggerate that closeness to others. And they will portray themselves to others as having lots of friends and knowing lots of important people and all that stuff, when in reality it's not quite like that. So they exaggerate emotions when they think it's in their best interest. They'll exaggerate stories. They will be opinionated often with no facts for their opinions. So they're just throwing opinions out there, but they can't substantiate them. They can't back them up. They have lack of sincerity because they're trying to mimic emotions that they think you're wanting to see, or will get them what they want to get them. But there's lack of sincerity, and so often you can spot the lack of sincerity when somebody is emotionally expressive. You can spot the lack of sincerity either by gauging the amplitude of the emotion, like the size of the emotion versus the size of the event. Do they match? And then if you're actually looking at the person, your intuition will kick in and say, okay, that person is not really sad, they're just pretending. Or that person is not really hurt, they're just pretending, they're looking for attention. And they're all doing all this for attention. This is all attention seeking based. So they're constantly seeking approval and reassurance from others. So they're very eager to please. They have a hard time saying no because they're looking for approval and reassurance from others. They have high sensitivity to criticism and being denied what they want, or being denied as people. So if they're coming at you, attention-seeking behaviors, they're seductive and all that, and you say, I'm not interested, they're very perturbed. It ticks them off. They may or may not express it to you right away, but it bugs the shit out of them. And if you watch them closely, you will see that they're bothered, even if they're not expressive. But if they're more expressive, they could even be violent. Inability to focus, difficulty finishing things. That's also a common one with APD, with the psychopaths and the sociopaths, especially the sociopaths. Because they're so distracted and they're looking for constant stimulation, they have a hard time focusing on things. They have a high need for constant stimulation, like I just said. So variety is important to them. They're jumping from one thing to another. They can't finish a single thing. Because they're sexually promiscuous, one way in which they find constant stimulation is variety of sexual partners. And because they're manipulative, chances are many of them don't know about the existence of other partners, or if they know, they don't know the whole truth, and they don't know of, it's just a mess basically in that sexual space. It turns into a mess. They're into experimental practices, I mean, all kinds of stuff. They're motivated by self-gain and for pleasure, just like the other guys, and persistent manipulators. So as you can see, quite a bit of overlap between antisocial personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder. One is more prevalent in men, the other more in women, but that doesn't mean you can see men and women in both. Then narcissistic personality disorder. These guys are interesting. They exaggerate feelings of self-importance. They have an excessive need for admiration. So they're constantly fishing for compliments. They're putting themselves in situations where they can be admired. They're surrounding themselves with people. And they're making up stories about themselves so that they can get that admiration. They're stealing affection. They're stealing admiration. They have lack of empathy, just like the other guys did. And lack of relating and understanding the feelings of others. And not that they actually care. They don't. But they care as much as if whatever emotion the other person is experiencing, how does that relate to them, and is it bringing them closer or further from that person? Are they getting what they want from that person? They're preoccupied with power and success. So these guys are usually telling you about all their grand plans that are totally unrealistic, even if they spend years in school and trying to figure it out. It's very unrealistic, but they are obsessed with success. So they try to surround themselves with successful people. They're willing to go whatever distance they have to get money, to get power. And because they're obsessed with power, they are constantly trying to overpower other people. So these guys are definitely power hoggers and mongers. They're preoccupied with appearance, narcissistic, right? Look at me, I'm beautiful. Very similar to the histrionic personality disorder. So because they're preoccupied with appearance, they're also preoccupied with, they have attention-seeking behaviors. Motivated, like everyone so far, motivated by personal gain and pleasure. Grandiosity combined with superiority. So they think of themselves in grandiose ways, and they act superior towards others. Not towards people of higher ranking than they are, but definitely people they perceive as below them. There will be belittling, there will be rude, and all kinds of ways. So self-perception is very inflated. They think of themselves as very unique. Yes, everybody's unique, but nobody's going around, a healthy adult, healthy psychologically adult is not going around thinking, I'm so unique, man, I'm so unique. These guys are constantly trying to convince others of their uniqueness. They're constantly trying to show themselves as special. And part of that is associating with high status people, because then have something to talk about and inflates their ego. So they have a sense of entitlement to special treatment. It's because they think they're so unique and so special, they expect you to deliver that kind of treatment. So they feel entitled. They're very exploitive of others. Yes, every one of these disorders is very exploitive of others because their prime motivation is personal gain and pleasure. But these guys especially so. they're intensely envious and towards others. So they're intensely envious towards others that they perceive of similar caliber as them, but maybe they do better, or they have more money or more power or more love or whatever they have. So they'll be very envious towards those people, and they will also believe that others are envious of them. And that could be the furthest from the truth, but in their mind, everybody's envious of who they are. It's crazy. They can be pompous and arrogant. They're very manipulative. So I want to get back to this pompous and arrogant thing. So the narcissist versus the histrionic and also the sociopaths. While the narcissist is pompous and arrogant, the HPD and the sociopaths are more charming and they build you up in order to hook you in. While these guys are straight up assholes, pompous and arrogant. Right from the start, you can notice them. They're very manipulative like everybody else. So they are the ones that like to emotionally torture you because they want you to feel less than you are so they can feel more than they are. It's a terrible dynamic. They exaggerate their own skills and accomplishment and their level of okay, so let me stop here. They exaggerate their skills and accomplishment. So they will they'll say that they can do something when they can't. So then maybe they pull it off, maybe they don't, but it's definitely stressful to them and stressful to everybody else involved. And they will exaggerate their accomplishments. So if they do one thing, it's going to sound like they've done 10 things. And they also exaggerate their level of intimacy with people of high status. So in order to feel better about themselves. So that's the narcissistic personality disorder. And then the borderline personality disorder, similar things, very impulsive and risky behavior, unstable, fragile self-image, so they're constantly looking for reassurance and looking for validation. But they're also like sorry asses. They'll be like feeling like they're the victim. Unstable and intense relationships. These guys can, go into something and burn huge and then fall hard. Up and down moods as a reaction to interpersonal stress. Like they're not very good. They don't have good interpersonal skills. So they'll have exaggerated up and down reactions to interpersonal stress. They exhibit suicidal behavior. They can show threats towards themselves, threats for injury towards themselves, but also towards others. They have intense fear of being alone. I would say that's also true for the histrionic personality disorder because they're so dependent on other people for validation. When they're by themselves, they don't know what to do. They become very depressed. Intense fear of being alone, so ongoing feeling of emptiness. It's the other side of that. Frequent and intense anger, so not bipolar, but borderline personality disorder people are volatile. They're very, very volatile. And then they experience and exhibit stress-related paranoia. So they're always thinking that somebody's out there to get them, especially when they're under stress. So, like I said, these disorders can bleed into each other and can create specific nuances for every individual. My personal experience recently was with a person that had a histrionic personality disorder. Again, women outnumber men 4-1. This was the one man. And he hit almost every single thing on this list. Constantly seeking approval, reassurance, center of attention, very vivacious, very sexual, very unsure of himself, and can't focus, can't stay alone, always needs stimulation, exaggerates his own skills and abilities. So this person actually, as a professional, I finally diagnosed him as histrionic personality disorder with narcissistic characteristics. So what does that mean to you, basically? It means that if you're in a situation like that, you need to get out as soon as possible, and it's going to be very difficult for you to get out. So how do you know you're in a situation like that? First of all, you should pay attention to the red flags that you see. So if you start feeling like it's all one-way street, like you're always giving and you're not, and the other person is not reciprocating, and if you feel like you care about them more than they care about you, even though they tell you that they care about you, they will tell you things like, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Nobody ever cares about me like you have cared about me. And I deeply care about you. I can't imagine life without you. They make you feel indispensable. That's how they rope you in. And then depending on whether they're sociopaths, psychopaths, or histrionic or narcissistic, they will embellish that narrative with other things, other types of manipulation. But if you start seeing red flags, if you feel like you're getting buttered up while your money's running out, there's an issue there. If you feel like you are confused because you feel like you never know what is true, you're probably right. It's because they're manipulating you. So like as your intuition is picking up on their behavior, on their red flags, they're telling you a story that doesn't match your intuition, and they're telling you a story to appease you and to subdue your intuition. And then you start doubting yourself. You go, well, is it me or is it them? Maybe I'm not seeing things correctly. So especially narcissists are very skillful at what we call gaslighting. Like they will contradict what you're seeing. They will erode your confidence in your own ability to tell what is real and what is not. And they will substitute yours with theirs. And you have a choice of either giving up your own ideas and giving up your own intuitions, and just accepting their version of reality, which you can never really truly do. Something inside of you always bugs you. Or you have a choice of just going along and saying, yeah, sure, but you really don't lose your own sense of self and your own sense of reality, but you just want to go along so there's no fight there. Or you just basically fight all the time what's real and what's not real. Either way, it's not a good situation. So any one of these disorders can be manipulating your perception, and they have a beautiful side about them and they have a dark side about them, and that's true for every human being. But for these folks, it's exaggerated, and for these folks, it's connected to no empathy and no regard for your feelings. Really, only connected with personal gain. So they will act the right parts, they will say the right things because they want to get what they want, not because they care about you. And this is probably the hardest thing for people to accept, is that they're actually not indispensable. Like, I'm not indispensable, anybody can take my place. But this person makes you feel like you're special because you're doing all these things for you, which then reinforces you to continue to do things for them. So they're getting exactly what they want out of you, and you're giving up your life, your energy, your money, your resources. And then you're so invested into the whole thing that it's hard to pull away. And also they appeal to our sense of wanting to be helpful, our need to be to care for someone, to contribute to someone's existence. So they will find in you what motivates you, and they will present themselves in such a way that you have an opportunity to be that for them. You have an opportunity to care for them. You have the opportunity to love them. You have the opportunity to help them, to fix them, to give them a better life because they really deserve it. They will get you there, but it will be fake. It will be totally fake. I shouldn't say totally fake, because depending on the disorder, they have a little bit of conscience in there. And you can't take this relationship as like 100% a movie, totally fake. There are sincere moments. There are times when they themselves believe what they're saying. But for the majority, the theme of the relationship is taking advantage of you. in whatever way they need to take advantage of you. So because of the sincere moments, because of the mixture of truths, half-truths, omissions, deceitful things behind your back, all that stuff, it becomes a very confusing space to be in. Very, very confusing space. You become literally disoriented psychologically. You love them and you hurt. You think it's you when it's them. You wonder if it's them or if it's you. You wonder if you should be doing more or you should be doing less. Are they really taking advantage of you, or are you just giving too much? And a lot of them, and the experience I had with the person that I had, he would say, well, I didn't ask for it. Well, of course you didn't ask for it. You just created a situation where I would do it. Like, you appeal to the other person. Oh, poor me, you know, I'm working so hard and I'm broke. So now we're going out to dinner. I feel like I should pay for dinner because you're working so hard and you're broke. So that kind of a thing happens. They don't necessarily tell you, give me your money, give me your bank account, or put my name on the house title. They don't do that. But they have other ways in which they manipulate you to want to do that for them. And so, while some of that kind of behavior is totally natural, like we want to do things for each other, right? Naturally, we're good people. At the same time, if you're not getting anything in return, after a while, you gotta notice that what you're putting out, you're not getting hardly anything back. And you're getting the feeling like you're being taken advantage of. But if you ask them and you try to talk to them about it, they will give you a better story. They're great rationalizers. They'll tell you they're busy, they do this, they're doing their best, they'll apologize, and they will again reiterate to you how important you are to them. So if you meet people like that, run as fast as you can. You cannot fix them. They are like that due to genetic factors, which means stuff in the brain not working the way normal people's brains work. They have societal influences, and they have family history, environmental influences that are working on them. So often these disorders appear after childhood experiences of violence and sexually and otherwise they've been taken advantage of. Abuse, sexual abuse or physical abuse. And often these personality disorders coexist with addictive behaviors. Substance abuse, gambling, sex addictions. So psychopaths, sociopaths, histrionic, PD, sexual addiction often is hand in hand with the personality disorder. And it's not that they're just very excited and sexually liberated. They're actually addicted. And it's a manipulation thing. That's how they get people in. That's how they get people hooked in. And that's how they feel validated, acknowledged, and being a center of attention. So if your person is exhibiting some of these behaviors, a big chunk of them, and at the same time they have another problem with addiction, then you definitely need to run away. Even if you don't actually diagnose them as one of these disorders, you just run away. It's not a healthy place to be. So one thing they all hate is being denied and being cut off. And so when you do cut them off and when you do deny them, expect retaliation. Not always. Some of them, you know, they just go, all right, I got this much out of this person, I move on to the next one. But some of them will definitely try to hook you back, retaliate in some way. Never go back. Never open the door again, because don't believe them when they tell you that they've changed. They cannot change. They will tell you that they're going to therapy. They tell you that they've been thinking about it. They're just trying to get you back in, whether they realize it or not. Now, I want to make that distinction. Not all of them are conniving, highly intelligent, evil geniuses. Some of them are, but not all of them. The person I had an experience with wasn't very smart. So a lot of what he was doing was just an instinctive survival mechanism. So some of them, that's the way they grow up. That's kind of like how they evolve. and it becomes a survival mechanism. They get results from what they do, and they don't even realize that there's something fundamentally, mentally, health-wise wrong with them. And they're not trying to be assholes, but they end up being assholes. So it really depends on the person, so you can't think that they're all evil. They're just troubled, and you can't fix them, so don't try to fix them just because they're troubled. Run away. And when they leave, because you've given up so much of your time and energy to that person and affection, and if you've been with a histrionic personality disorder or psychopath, they've given you a lot of pleasure and compliments and all that stuff. When they leave, you're gonna feel very empty, and you have to rebuild yourself. Like, you're going to feel like, first of all, you're going to feel like you were babysitting an adult the entire time. So you're going to feel kind of liberated. But after a few days or weeks or something, reality is going to set in, and you're going to start missing the good parts of the relationship. Just remember, it was fake, and it wasn't for your sake. It was for their sake. They were taking advantage of you. So it's hard to get over people like that. The longer you've been in such relationships, the harder it is, because you have more history and all that. In my case, it was super brief, so it doesn't really matter. And I had this guy's number from the beginning. I was already getting red flags. I just wasn't paying too much attention because I wasn't really interested in having a relationship or being a couple with the guy. I was just having a good time, so I didn't think it would bother me. But even I fell into progressively more involved relationship with this person while not wanting to have a relationship with this person. And so even for me, it was very confusing towards the end, and breaking up with him, dumping him, was confusing. Like, even though I know all these things, I built a case against the guy. Like, it helped me sit down and be rational. Like, what am I doing? I gotta get out of here. This is crazy, And he gave me a reason too. Like, he broke my trust. And so that was sort of like, oh, I guess I better get out now than stick around even more. So I ended up just totally severing ties with the person, but letting you know it's not that easy. And one of the best things you can do for yourself is surround yourself with friends that you can trust. Do activities that you love. Even when you don't want to do something because you're depressed, go out there and do it. Educate yourself and listen to stories of other people that have been in your shoes. And build your own life. Focus on something that has meaning to you, project or work-wise or family-wise, whatever, and put your energy into that. And then you'll get over them a lot faster. But under no circumstances, you should go back to them. You will be going back right where you left off. And you're going to hate yourself for it, because you're going to end up eventually in the same place wanting to run away because you're going crazy. So if you have any questions about these things, or if you're in a relationship with someone like that, or have been in a relationship with someone like that, I'll be happy to talk to you and help you sort things out and rebuild yourself. So if you want to leave me a comment or send me an email, please do. ValentinaPetrovaConsulting.com, or you can comment right below this video. And I will talk to you guys another time. Take care. Bye.